Welcome back to Globewise Entertainment, your ultimate destination for Hollywood's wildest, most unbelievable stories. Today, we're counting down 12 sci-fi movies so bad they were pulled from theaters, films that promised epic adventures, futuristic worlds, and thrilling action, but ended up disappearing from screens almost as quickly as they arrived. From chaotic productions to unforgettable flops, these movies prove that not every sci-fi dream makes it to the stars. If you haven't subscribed to Globewise Entertainment yet, hit that subscribe button now so you never miss our deep dives into Hollywood's most shocking stories. And don't forget, tell us in the comments which movie surprised you the most or which one you secretly love. 12. Metalstorm, The Destruction of Jaredson, 1983. By the early 1980s, Hollywood was desperate to cash in on the sci-fi craze sparked by Star Wars, and Mad Max Studios believed audiences would watch anything set in the future, as long as it had explosions, laser guns, and wild vehicles. That gamble led to one of the most infamous sci-fi misfires of the decade, Metalstorm, The Destruction of Jaredson. Released in 1983 and shot in 3D, Metalstorm promised a thrilling post-apocalyptic adventure. Instead, it delivered a confusing mess of recycled ideas, wooden performances, and effects that looked outdated even by early 80s standards. The story follows a futuristic desert world ruled by the evil tyrant Jaredson, whose name alone became a punchline among critics. A lone hero rises to stop him, but the plot never quite figures out how or why. Audiences expecting mind-blowing 3D visuals were sorely disappointed. The effects were awkward, poorly timed, and often distracting. Scenes dragged on with clunky dialogue, while action moments felt slow and unconvincing. Critics quickly labeled the film as a bargain bin knockoff with none of the excitement it tried to imitate. The backlash was swift. Ticket sales collapsed within days, and many theaters quietly pulled Metalstorm from their screens early, replacing it with more reliable crowd pleasers. What was meant to be a blockbuster launch instead became a cautionary tale about chasing trends without substance. Yet, like many cinematic disasters, Metalstorm found a second life years later. Today, it's remembered as a cult curiosity, a movie so flawed that sci-fi fans watch it for unintentional laughs and nostalgia. Its failure perfectly captures an era when studios rushed films to theaters hoping style alone would save them. Metalstorm, The Destruction of Jaredson stands as a reminder that big ideas and flashy gimmicks mean nothing without strong storytelling, and that not every sci-fi epic is destined for the stars. 11. Solarbabies, 1986. When Hope, Hoverboards, and Hollywood Collide. Released in 1986, Solarbabies was meant to ride the wave of Star Wars and the rising popularity of youth-driven sci-fi adventures. Set in a bleak, post-apocalyptic desert world where water is controlled by a ruthless regime, the film follows a group of orphan teens who discover a mysterious glowing orb, an ancient power source rumored to restore life, freedom, and hope. On paper, it sounded like a sure hit: rebellious kids, futuristic sports, spiritual sci-fi themes, and flashy visuals perfectly tailored for the MTV generation. But execution proved to be Solarbabies' greatest enemy. With a massive budget for its time, reportedly over $20 million, the film struggled to balance tone, story, and audience expectations. Studio interference led to constant rewrites, rushed editing, and a final cut that felt confusing and uneven. What was intended as an epic sci-fi adventure came across as a strange mix of roller-skating teens, vague mysticism, and underdeveloped world-building. Critics and audiences alike were left scratching their heads. The backlash was swift. Poor word of mouth and weak box office performance forced theaters to quietly pull Solarbabies from circulation much earlier than planned. Marketing couldn't save it, and the film quickly became a cautionary tale of what happens when big ideas clash with studio pressure and unclear creative direction. Despite featuring young actors who would later find success, Solarbabies failed to launch the franchise Hollywood had hoped for. Today, Solarbabies survives as a cult curiosity, a fascinating relic of 1980s sci-fi ambition gone wrong. Some viewers appreciate its themes of freedom, unity, and environmental survival, while others see it as a textbook example of wasted potential. Either way, its brief theatrical life secures its place on our list as one of the most infamous sci-fi films, so flawed that theaters simply couldn't keep it spinning. Written in a dramatic yet advertiser-friendly tone. 10. Howard the Duck, 1986, when sci-fi ambition turned into a box office disaster. Released in 1986 and backed by George Lucas, Howard the Duck should have been a groundbreaking sci-fi comedy. Instead, it became one of Hollywood's most infamous misfires, so poorly received that many theaters quietly cut its run short due to empty seats and negative buzz. The film followed Howard, a wisecracking, human-sized duck accidentally transported from his distant planet to Earth. What was meant to be a quirky mix of science fiction, comedy, and adventure confused audiences almost instantly. The movie couldn't decide whether it was for kids or adults, resulting in a tone that felt awkward, uncomfortable, and completely out of place for mainstream viewers. Despite impressive special effects for the 1980s and a sizable budget, critics were ruthless. Reviews slammed the film for its strange humor, messy storyline, and unsettling character design. Audiences stayed away, and ticket sales dropped rapidly after opening weekend. Some cinemas reportedly removed the film early to make room for stronger performers. Financially, the damage was severe. With a production budget of around $37 million, Howard the Duck earned far less than expected, becoming a symbol of how even major studios can fail spectacularly. It also earned several Razzie Awards, cementing its reputation as one of the worst sci-fi films ever made. Ironically, decades later, Howard the Duck has gained a cult following. Viewers now watch it out of curiosity, nostalgia, or pure disbelief. What once ended theatrical runs early has become a cautionary tale in Hollywood history, proof that big budgets and famous names don't guarantee success. From box office bomb to pop culture legend, Howard the Duck remains one of the most unforgettable sci-fi failures ever pulled from theaters. 9. Jem and the Holograms, 2015. When nostalgia hit the wrong note. In 2015, Jem and the Holograms arrived with a built-in fanbase and a colorful legacy from the 1980s animated series. On paper, it sounded like a safe sci-fi adjacent pop fantasy, hologram technology, digital fame, and a modern update for a new generation. But what unfolded became one of Hollywood's most surprising misfires, so fast and so complete that the film practically vanished from theaters within weeks. The original Jem was all about bold neon style, futuristic flair, and larger-than-life music powered by advanced hologram tech. Fans expected spectacle. Instead, the movie delivered a grounded, low-energy teen drama that stripped away most of the sci-fi elements that made the franchise special. The iconic holograms? Barely present. The futuristic vibe? Almost gone. For longtime fans, it felt less like an update and more like a total reboot that forgot its own identity. What truly hurt Jem and the Holograms was the reaction. Before release, the trailer faced massive online backlash, becoming one of the most disliked movie trailers of its time. That negative buzz translated directly into box office disaster. Despite opening in thousands of theaters, ticket sales collapsed almost immediately. In many locations, screenings were canceled due to empty seats, and the film quietly disappeared from cinemas just days after its debut. Financially, it was a shock. With a modest production budget, expectations weren't sky-high, but the returns were far lower than anyone predicted. The movie earned only a fraction of its costs, placing it among the biggest commercial failures of the decade. Studios took notice, and Jem became a cautionary tale about mishandling beloved intellectual property. Today, Jem and the Holograms lives on as a reminder that nostalgia alone doesn't guarantee success. Audiences want respect for the source material, especially when sci-fi concepts like holograms and futuristic tech are central to the story. When those elements disappear, so does the magic. It's not remembered as the worst movie ever made, but it is remembered as one that fell so hard, so fast, that theaters had no choice but to move on. In the world of sci-fi misfires, Gem and the Holograms hit a note so off-key that the curtain closed almost immediately. Up next, another sci-fi movie that promised big ideas and vanished just as quickly. 8. The Garbage Pail Kids Movie, 1987. Released in 1987, The Garbage Pail Kids movie tried to turn one of the most popular and controversial trading card crazes of the 1980s into a family-friendly sci-fi fantasy. What followed, however, became one of Hollywood's most infamous cinematic misfires. The film centers on a group of mutated, trash-loving creatures created by a mysterious inventor. Living in secret, these bizarre characters emerge from hiding to help a bullied teenager chase his dream of becoming a fashion designer. On paper, it sounded like a quirky mix of science fiction, comedy, and heart. On screen, it quickly became something else entirely. Audiences were shocked by the movie's tone and visuals. The creature designs, intended to be playful and imaginative, were widely criticized as unsettling rather than charming. Parents expecting a light-hearted kids' movie were caught off guard, while younger viewers found the characters more confusing than entertaining. The humor missed its mark, and the story struggled to find a clear identity, too strange for children, yet too juvenile for adults. Critics responded with near-universal disapproval. Reviews described the film as chaotic, poorly structured, and deeply misguided in its attempt to appeal to mainstream audiences. The backlash was swift and word of mouth spread fast. Theater attendance dropped dramatically after opening weekend. As a result, The Garbage Pail Kids movie was quietly pulled from many theaters, becoming a cautionary tale about turning popular merchandise into movies without a clear creative vision. Instead of launching a franchise, it became a box office failure and one of the lowest-rated films of its era. Ironically, decades later, the film found a second life. What once ended its theatrical run has helped it achieve cult status. Today, it's remembered not for success, but as a fascinating example of how bold ideas can go spectacularly wrong, earning its place among the most notorious sci-fi flops ever made. 7. Morbius, 2022. The blockbuster that became a meme. When Sony Pictures released Morbius in 2022, expectations were sky-high. Starring Jared Leto as a tortured scientist turned vampire anti-hero, the film was meant to expand Sony's Marvel universe and follow the financial success of Venom. Instead, Morbius became one of the most talked-about sci-fi failures of the decade. The story follows Dr. Michael Morbius, a brilliant scientist suffering from a rare blood disease. In a desperate attempt to save himself and others like him, Morbius experiments with genetically modified bats. The result? Superhuman strength, heightened senses, and an uncontrollable thirst for blood. On paper, it sounds like classic comic book sci-fi horror. On screen, however, things went very wrong. From the moment it hit theaters, Morbius struggled. Critics found the plot confusing, the tone inconsistent, and the action oddly lifeless for a superhero film. Audiences were left puzzled, and word of mouth spread fast. Ticket sales dropped sharply after opening weekend, leading many theaters to quietly reduce showtimes. But what truly sealed Morbius' fate was the internet. The movie quickly became a viral meme, mocked across social media for its awkward dialogue and unclear storytelling. Phrases and scenes were taken out of context, exaggerated, and shared millions of times. Ironically, the memes became more popular than the movie itself. In a rare Hollywood miscalculation, Sony decided to re-release Morbius in theaters, hoping online buzz would translate into ticket sales. Instead, history repeated itself. The film earned even less the second time, prompting many theaters to pull it early due to extremely low attendance. Despite the embarrassment, Morbius is now remembered as a cult curiosity, a film so misjudged that it became legendary for all the wrong reasons. While it didn't succeed as a sci-fi superhero blockbuster, It earned a strange kind of immortality in internet culture. Sometimes, even big budgets, famous actors, and famous franchises aren't enough. Morbius stands as a reminder that in sci-fi cinema, execution matters just as much as ambition. 6. The Adventures of Pluto Nash, 2002. In 2002, Hollywood placed a massive bet on a futuristic comedy that was supposed to be Eddie Murphy's big sci-fi hit. Instead, it became one of the most infamous box office disasters in movie history. The Adventures of Pluto Nash was set in a flashy, neon-lit future where the moon had been colonized and Earth's criminals had simply moved upstairs. Murphy starred as Pluto Nash, a nightclub owner fighting corrupt corporations, mobsters, and lunar chaos in the year 2087. On paper, it sounded promising. A beloved comedy starred at a big sci-fi setting, a massive studio budget. But when the film finally hit theaters, everything went wrong. The movie reportedly cost over $100 million to produce, with expensive sets, visual effects, and futuristic designs meant to impress audiences. Unfortunately, what viewers got felt strangely outdated, like a mix of old sci-fi cliches and jokes that never quite landed. Critics were brutal. The humor felt forced, the story lacked tension, the futuristic world looked expensive but oddly lifeless. Even Eddie Murphy's usual charm couldn't save it. Word spread fast, and theater seats emptied almost as quickly as they were filled on opening weekend. In many locations, showtimes were quietly reduced, screens were reassigned to better-performing films, and Pluto Nash was effectively pulled early from theaters, long before it had any chance to recover. The financial fallout was devastating. The film earned less than $10 million worldwide, making it one of the biggest box office bombs of all time. Studios would later study Pluto Nash as a cautionary tale, proof that star power and a huge budget don't guarantee success. Yet, years later, the movie gained a strange afterlife. Some viewers now see it as a curious time capsule of early 2000s sci-fi, an ambitious idea that simply missed its moment. Others still point to it as one of Hollywood's most shocking miscalculations. The Adventures of Pluto Nash didn't just fail, it became legendary for all the wrong reasons. And that's exactly why it earns its place on this list. 5. Delgo, 2008. When ambition outran execution. When Delgo finally reached theaters in 2008, it carried the weight of nearly a decade of development, multiple delays, and sky-high expectations. Marketed as an epic animated fantasy with political intrigue, romance, and war, the film aimed to rival giants like Avatar and The Lord of the Rings. Instead, Delgo became a cautionary tale of how passion alone can't save a project when storytelling and timing fall apart. Set in a visually ambitious fantasy world, Delgo follows a young outsider caught between two warring races. On paper, the premise sounded promising. In reality, audiences were confused by its dense lore, awkward pacing, and emotionally flat characters. Despite a recognizable voice cast, including Freddie Prinze Jr., Jennifer Love Hewitt, and Anne Bancroft, the animation felt dated even at release, and the script failed to connect with viewers. Critics were brutal, and word of mouth turned toxic almost immediately. The result was disastrous. Delgo opened in over 2,000 theaters but earned just a few $100,000 in its opening weekend, one of the worst wide releases in box office history. Within days, many theaters quietly pulled the film due to empty seats and non-existent demand. What was supposed to be a groundbreaking animated sci-fi fantasy vanished almost overnight, becoming infamous rather than inspirational. Today, Delgo lives on not as a forgotten gem, but as a stark reminder of how long development cycles, creative indecision, and poor release timing can doom even the most ambitious ideas. It's proof that in Hollywood, vision without execution can turn a dream project into a box office legend, for all the wrong reasons. 4. Madame Web 2024, Superhero Spectacle, or Supernova of Failure. When Madame Web hit theaters on Valentine's Day 2024, Sony and Marvel fans hoped for a fresh twist on the Spider-Verse, a bold new heroine with psychic powers, a star-studded cast led by Dakota Johnson, and a vision of a sprawling new franchise. What they got instead was one of the most spectacular cinematic backfires of recent memory. This $80 million superhero film was meant to kickstart a powerful new corner of Sony's Spider-Man universe, featuring multiple female leads and high-concept sci-fi elements. But from the first trailer to the final cut, audiences and critics alike recoiled. The marketing became meme fodder, and early reaction was overwhelmingly negative. Critics panned it relentlessly for its muddled story, lifeless writing, and uninspired execution, even calling it worse than other notorious franchise flops like Morbius. On Rotten Tomatoes, it sank into the low single digits, and audiences weren't kind either. At the box office, the result was grim. Opening weekend numbers were far below expectations, theaters reported low ticket sales, and within just weeks, Madame Web was quietly pulled from many screens as cinemas shifted to more successful movies. While some theaters kept it barely alive, most chains cut their losses early, a shameful fate for what was meant to be a blockbuster launchpad. Even Sony executives later admitted the film bombed and blamed crushing critic reviews for scaring off audiences, though others argued the weak word-of-mouth and pre-release mockery were equally to blame. Today, Madame Web has found a second life as a cautionary tale rather than a celebrated franchise starter, embraced more as so bad it's good commentary fodder on streaming platforms than as the superhero epic it was meant to be. Many fans now joke that it deserves a special place in the pantheon of movies that shouldn't have left the editing room, let alone the theaters. 3. Max Steel, 2016. A franchise that never took off. When Max Steel hit theaters in 2016, it was meant to be the launchpad for a brand new sci-fi superhero franchise. Backed by a popular toy line and an animated TV legacy, the film was designed to capture the same audience that flocked to Transformers and the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Studios envisioned sequels, spin-offs, and merchandise empires. What they got instead was a box office crash that ended those dreams almost instantly. The story follows teenager Max McGrath, who discovers he can generate powerful energy, but only when paired with a wisecracking alien named Steel. While the concept sounded marketable, the execution felt painfully generic. Audiences criticized the film's flat characters, predictable plot, and lifeless dialogue. Even the action, a key selling point, felt muted and rushed, failing to deliver the spectacle fans expected from a big-screen sci-fi superhero movie. Critics were unforgiving, but worse was audience apathy. Max Steel opened to dismal numbers, earning only a fraction of its production budget. Theaters reported empty seats, and word of mouth spread fast that the movie felt more like a low-budget TV pilot than a cinematic event. Within weeks, many cinemas reduced showtimes or quietly pulled it altogether to make room for stronger performers. Today, Max Steel is remembered not as the birth of a cinematic universe, but as a warning sign of what happens when studios chase franchises without first delivering a compelling film. It stands as a reminder that brand recognition alone can't save a movie, and that sometimes the most powerful energy a film generates is disappointment. 2. Battlefield Earth, 2000. A sci-fi catastrophe written in stars. When Battlefield Earth hit theaters in 2000, it promised an epic clash between humans and aliens in a dystopian future. Based on L. Ron Hubbard's 1982 novel, the film had all the ingredients for a cult classic: towering sets, a post-apocalyptic world, and a story of humanity's resistance against an oppressive alien race known as the Cyclos. Unfortunately, the execution was catastrophically off. From the very first scenes, critics and audiences alike were baffled. John Travolta, who not only starred as the villainous Turl but also produced the film, delivered a performance that many described as over-the-top and unintentionally comedic. The movie's dialogue, laden with awkward exposition, became fodder for ridicule. Meanwhile, the special effects and CGI, which should have immersed viewers in a futuristic Earth, looked cheap and outdated even for 2000 standards. Opening weekend numbers were disastrous. While initially shown in over 2,500 theaters, the film quickly hemorrhaged audiences. Theater owners pulled it fast as word of mouth spread. Audiences left theaters bewildered or laughing at scenes that were meant to be serious. With a staggering budget of $73 million and a worldwide gross of just $29 million, Battlefield Earth became a textbook example of how hype, star power, and source material cannot save a movie that fails to connect with viewers. Today, Battlefield Earth is remembered less as a sci-fi epic and more as a cautionary tale of Hollywood ambition gone horribly wrong. Its notorious reputation has made it a cult watch for those who revel in so bad it's good cinema, ensuring it earns revenue even decades after its initial failure. Proof that even the worst flops can find a second life in pop culture. 1. Supernova, 2000. Space, stars, and a supernova of disaster. When Supernova blasted into theaters in 2000, it promised audiences a thrilling ride through the dark expanse of space, filled with mystery, danger, and cutting-edge sci-fi action. With a cast featuring James Spader, Angela Bassett, and Robert Forster, it had all the ingredients for a space blockbuster, on paper. But behind the scenes, Supernova was spiraling out of control. The production was plagued by creative chaos. The original director was replaced, massive reshoots changed the story mid-flight, and the script went through countless rewrites. The end result was a confusing, inconsistent film where characters seemed to drift aimlessly through a plot that made little sense. Even the special effects, meant to awe audiences, felt disjointed and uneven. Critics panned it mercilessly, calling it an incoherent mess that fails to ignite any excitement. When Supernova hit theaters, audiences quickly followed critics' lead. Box office numbers were catastrophic, and theater owners began pulling the film just days after release. It became one of the most notorious examples of a sci-fi movie burning out before it could even reach full orbit. Today, Supernova has achieved a strange kind of fame, mainly among sci-fi fans who watch it as a so-bad-it's-entertaining cult disaster. Its story serves as a harsh reminder, even with a star-studded cast and futuristic visuals, production chaos and a lack of coherent vision can turn a potential blockbuster into a cinematic black hole. And that's a wrap on our countdown of 12 sci-fi movies so bad they were pulled from theaters. From chaotic productions to epic flops, these films prove that even the biggest budgets can't save a movie from disaster. If you haven't subscribed to Globewise Entertainment yet, hit that subscribe button now so you never miss our deep dives into Hollywood's wildest stories. Sparkles. Now we want to hear from you. Which of these sci-fi flops surprised you the most, or which one do you secretly enjoy? Drop your favorite in the comment box below and let's start the conversation. Stay tuned, because the next Globewise Entertainment countdown might just blow your mind.